Easy guys, welcome back to the lab. In today's WorldBox experiment, I give a human civilization 1,000 years to prepare for the zombie apocalypse, to see if they survive, and if they do, how. To keep things legitimate, I use this map, a full reproduction of Earth. It seemed only natural to begin where civilization actually began, East Africa. The first 10 humans quickly built a settlement, Yeha, the first village. Houses went up, families formed, and with them came the first children. One of them was named Tafari. He's the first human born in this world, and to make sure we don't lose him, I'm granting him immortality, so he won't die of old age. Whatever happens to this civilization, Tafari will be there to see it. His parents lived in a home by the sea. From that doorstep, Tafari watched Yeha grow, the town hall rising behind him, the first farm taking shape in the fields beyond. A port appeared on the waterfront, ships going out, coming back with food. By the year 30, Yeha had reached a population of 50, and Tafari had his first job, a farmhand, looking after the wheat. Not long after, the second village emerged, Jahu. Our experiment was taking a foothold. Tafari found a lover, 3 children followed. Yeha kept growing. By year 50, the population had reached 120, with a standing army of 19. Whoa, look at that guy. This soldier is twice the size of the villages around him. I'm gonna name them the Mountain, giving them immortality. I want to keep an eye on that guy. Jahu had grown to a population of 40, and a new village, Jastorf, had been founded in the north. England, meanwhile, was empty, too small for WorldBox to generate a settlement. Its sole inhabitant, a single raccoon. I named him Sirach, honored knight, guardian of the realm. Back in Jastorf, some kind of pecking order was being established. Villagers throwing Molotov cocktails at each other on the street. Medieval diplomacy. Good to see everything was in order. Back in Yeha, Tafari had grown grey hair. He was 49 already. Time flies. As the years rolled on, by year 66 the village of Amya had formed. Followed shortly after by Ekven, civilization was thriving. After 100 years, the first colonies appeared to the west. Port-au-Choix, the human race was expanding. But Sirach, first of his name, guardian of England, was starving. As a gift from the gods, I granted him sheep. Very English. You can't go anywhere in the English countryside without seeing a sheep. I also granted Sirach a full set of armor, which, curiously, he could wear even as a raccoon. A knight demands the finest armor. Worried that my little experiment had gone too long without incident, I decided to throw a disruptor into the mix. In the village of Jahu, the son of a leader, a warrior named Batu, strong, agile, immortal, a charming, impulsive man with one dream: to be king. But before we had time to breathe, rebellion, a new kingdom of Portadillo had formed, fracturing the realm and driving villagers to war. Yeha versus Amya, but Jahu lay directly in Yeha's path. Batu appeared on the front lines. Soldiers stormed across the border. Hundreds perished, and even Tafari was conscripted into Yeha's army to fight for his kingdom. For one brief moment, Tafari and Batu were on opposite sides of the same battle. Jahu's army was overwhelmed. What followed was not a duel, just a man and his village getting beaten on by an army that was already winning. Jahu declared independence, but for Batu, that was cold comfort. He was now the leader of a village with no army, no allies, and a bruise that would take some time to forget. This was not the life of the great Batu. Tafari, on the other hand, was devastated. He'd been injured in the war and lost a child in the fighting. And for what? A difference of opinion? The world kept growing. Pedra Farada appeared to the west, Warati to the southeast, and Lagoa Santa as populations swelled and immigrants pushed further from the east. Civilization, despite everything, was thriving. Sirach, first of his name, guardian of the sheep and chickens, was well fed. The science gods had smiled upon him. But the war was brewing in the east. With nowhere left to expand, kingdoms fractured. Those just trying to keep the peace with their neighbors inadvertently became enemies. Fighting erupted at the edge of Jahu. Then Ekven declared war. their land stuck in the middle of everyone. Once again, Batu suffered a humiliating loss, pounded across his village as foreign armies leveled up on his ridiculous health pool. Batu surrendered. Yahoo fell to a new kingdom. Maybe this time his village would know peace. Batu was not convinced. He set off on a great pilgrimage through Southeast Asia, tired of being on the losing end of every war, plotting his next move. One day, everyone in the realm would know of the great Batu. Meanwhile, for Tafari, life went on as usual, still in the same house by the sea. By year 200, I noticed something curious. Tafari had developed some pretty advanced combat skills without having killed a single person. Make of that what you will. Serac watched over his flock. To the west, new villages emerged. Kuikugu to the south, Spiro, Keatley Creek, and Calvert Isle. The world kept filling up. Batu, leader of Yahoo, returned home from his sabbatical. Almost immediately, another war broke out between Amur and Ekvan. As usual, Yahoo stood in the middle. The two armies threw themselves at each other, Batu getting beaten on until his village changed hands yet again. That was until the king of the Portadillo Alliance was killed, and Yahoo declared independence once more. Hopefully the new king would be cooler-headed. The Mountain? How did he get to Amur? Drop your theory in the comments below. The Mountain King. If only he had a haul. WorldBox is so much more interesting when you follow the characters through the world. Somehow in the chaos, Batu had forged a new kingdom and declared himself king. Finally, his dreams were coming to fruition. That was until Amur and Ekvan declared war on each other again. This time, Ekvan fell, and combined they declared war across the sea on Pedra Ferrada and Kuikugu. This is the moment where armies send half a dozen soldiers at a time across the ocean to their doom. Here's one landing now. Well, that was that. Even so, it wasn't much longer before Pedra Ferrada suffered a humiliating loss. The cycle was never-ending. It wasn't long before Yahoo found itself in the middle of yet another war with the Portadillo Kingdom, and once again, Batu was getting beaten on. This time, the two kings found each other on the battlefield, Batu and the Mountain. What followed was a vicious duel. For once, Batu gained the upper hand, and on the brink of death, the Mountain surrendered his crown. The great Batu, finally a victory. In the years that followed, more wars, more rebellions, more new alliances as leaders jostled for power, until some kind of temporary balance was achieved. Despite the calamity elsewhere, Yeha remained relatively peaceful. Few wars. I suspect this had something to do with the water surrounding them on three sides. Tafari's home was quite magnificent by this point, as was the town hall behind it. Not so much for Serac. Despite having no obvious enemies, he was repeatedly getting hurt. Perhaps his sheep were fighting back. As usual, peace on the mainland didn't last. War broke out again, and Batu found himself in the middle of it once more. With great frustration, he abandoned his crown. This never-ending feud was hopeless, but it presented an opportunity. Where villages on the continent had fallen under the new kingdom of Valanar, open borders lay everywhere, and Batu seized the moment, stepped onto a boat, and sailed for Lagoa Santa. Glory and fortune awaited, he was sure of it. But over the next 100 years, things were hard for Batu. He kept hold of his title as leader, but slept on the streets without a home for years. For a short while, the world seemed to fall in line, but the gods of science had grown restless. It was the year 541. Rumors began to circulate, people getting sick in the port of Yeha. Plague. Out of a sapient population of over 2,000, 150 had become infected. People were collapsing in the town square, and Yeha's population plummeted. Soon, almost 800 were infected, and 100 had already died. Tafari had lost his best friend, his lover, and his two remaining children. Yet as always, death did not take him. With every village under one kingdom, the plague began to spread. There was always a busy corridor of people moving through this mountain range, and I could see some were already carrying the pink icon of death. Yahoo's population fell. In 5 years, 530 had already died. Serac, on the other hand, was completely fine, and no longer getting injured. Soon, Yeha's population had been reduced to just 7. A thriving city became a ghost town. Yet in the aftermath, a new pattern began to emerge. Immunity. Those that had built resilience to the plague lived on. It would be interesting to see if that helped them in the apocalypse to come. With over 1,000 dead, word spread quickly across the sea. In Lagoa Santa, Batu leapt at an opportunity. A rebellion. The Eastern powers were weakened. The borders were open. This was his moment. Batu seized control of the lower continent in a short, swift war. King once more. The question was, could he hold it? The East had been so badly weakened. But history for Batu had a pattern, and Valinar weren't about to let the village slip from their grasp. They slammed the coastline with ships, bombarding Lagoa Santa from the sea. But Batu was not a man to be taken lightly. He fought back single-handed against every soldier who came for his village and took it back. Then he pushed north. If he could gain control of the upper continent, he would be a much harder man to remove. The great Batu, thinking like a king. Meanwhile in Yeha, out of the ashes a new survivor emerged. Justinia, wise beyond her years, strong, unburdened by the ego that drives the men around her. She finds Tafari, an old man trying to rebuild a farm. His legend precedes him, but there he was, working the farm he had worked 500 years prior. And something in that quiet determination makes sense to her. She begins to gather resources from the mine, abandoned since the plague. Able-bodied workers were in short supply. Back in the west, old rivals fought once more. The mountain, still part of Valinar, still angered by his defeat at Batu's hands years ago, summoned a storm against Batu's people. A distant rumble echoes, answering the mountain's call. Epic. Lagoa Santa was in ruins, pounded by ships and lightning from afar. But, at least with everybody dead, Batu finally had a house. It wasn't long before even that was taken from him. Fortune had not been kind to Batu, the man who would be king, pounded by cannon fire, driven into the sea. On the other side of the world, Warati had been invaded. Justinia, pulled away from her efforts to rebuild Yeha, was sent with a group of soldiers to take the island. It swiftly fell under the banner of Valinar, and Justinia was eager to return to Yeha to help Tafari. Batu's village also fell, surrendering his crown, no longer a king, ousted not only by an enemy, but by his own people. But this did not faze Batu. For a man like Batu, where there was war, there was opportunity. He hopped on a boat. After a long voyage, he finds himself in Warati, a new chapter in his ambitious plan. And so the world went on. Our experiment slowly recovered from its minor setback. Populations rebuilt, cities grew, and Yeha reached almost 400 souls by year 800, although time had not been kind to Tafari. Crippled and slow, damaged by age and injury, an ordinary man who kept getting pulled into extraordinary events and kept returning to the same small life afterwards. Every time the world tried to make him something bigger, he went back to the farm. The mountain had settled into his role as leader, and Serac remained almost 800 years old, watching over his land of sheep. But it was Batu, the most known man in the world, who had visited every continent in search of his kingdom and fought in more wars than anyone alive who stood apart. 50 kills, the most traveled, the most tested. Tafari remained the oldest. Justinia had the most births, 34 children. Wow. Doing her part to repopulate Yeha. Batu and Tafari, the happiest despite everything. The mountain, the strongest man alive, but at the 1,000-year mark, Serac was gone without a trace. Maybe he emigrated, maybe his sheep finally got the better of him. For 1,000 years he defended England, sole knight of the Lamb Table. You will not be forgotten, sir. But the science gods once again had grown weary. At first whispers, the dead were not staying dead. Things escalated. For every 2 men alive, a zombie was placed into the world. An army of 1,000 undead appeared in Jahu overnight. The first wave was devastating. Soldiers who responded to the threat were shredded. The horde spread north and west simultaneously, a fight for survival on both fronts. Zombies rushed town buildings, clearing them out before moving on to the next. Every soldier defeated by a zombie came back as another zombie. Every fight that seemed to swing in humanity's favor pivoted immediately back towards the horde. Melee units threw themselves into the wall of the undead. Foolishly, this only made things worse. It was the archers of Yeha who found the answer. picking zombies off from range, staying tight as a group, funneling the horde into a valley carved out by the mountain range. If you could keep them in a funnel, you could control the numbers. To the north, soldiers desperately tried to hold the zombie waves back, the population of Yahoo already almost gone. Out of 1,000 zombies, several hundred remained. Enter the mountain. Strongest man in the realm, word had reached him. Archers were the answer. The mountain took no chances, bringing his finest alongside him, but the zombies were regrouping, slowed, picking off stragglers one at a time, but moving. The archers to the south were demolishing lone zombies, leveling the playing field, but clusters were still pushing forward. Then, the mountain was flanked. Away from either side, the horde enveloped his archers, evaporating his ranged support in moments. Still the strongest man in the realm, he cut down the zombies one after another, throwing up a defensive bubble, holding the line alone. But it wasn't the zombies that were wounding him, it was the infection. He pushed towards the river, an old trick he learned watching Predator. Water disperses the scent, breaking the trail, buys time. Like something out of a nightmare, the plan worked. It was too little, too late. The infection finished him, and a new player entered the battlefield. The undead mountain, all of the mountain's power, all of his health. The new undead king. To the south, Teferi was making his way from Yeha to reinforce the front lines. He was, well, slow. He was 991 years old. The southern archers moved forward, giving up their mountain defense. Zombies were still everywhere, chaos in the streets, unclear who would gain the upper hand. 1,100 souls remained. Justinia worked her way south, hoping to rendezvous with Teferi coming up from the north. A pincer movement. Only Jastor and Yeha had any populations left, and the undead mountain was on the move. Teferi was still emerging from the south. The undead mountain moved straight into Justinia's path. They locked in battle. Teferi was still too far away. Come on, Teferi. Justinia was strong, but her health was falling. One-on-one with the undead mountain and a group of his underlings was a tall order. A villager ran in to help and was swatted aside like he wasn't there. Justinia needed reinforcements. Teferi still hadn't arrived. She knew when a fight was too much. On the brink of death, she retreated. Better to fight another day. Little remained of the eastern population now. The west showed little sign of infection. The undead mountain made his way south, with little opposition as he pushed into Yeha, but now faced stiff resistance from archers and boats holding the waterfront. Another war was kicking off to the west. More rivalries between kings. They would have to be careful not to pull reinforcements from the east, where the zombie outbreak was still rampant. Wait, Teferi's on his way back to Yeha to protect his home. And in Warati, someone just offloaded a ton of soldiers off a boat. Yep, they're turning. Warati's population was dropped badly, but they faced King Batu, cutting them down one by one, leaving a trail of bodies in his wake. The population had dropped to 612. Humanity might make this. Batu's gone for a refreshing swim. Looks like he's got reinforcements. Warati appears to be in the clear after losing almost its entire population. But in the clear. Teferi is locked in battle with the undead mountain. Come on, Teferi. At this point in the video, that's his tagline. Justinia is just north of Yeha, but she doesn't know Teferi is there. He's still fighting. The undead mountain is monstrous. Despite a long and arduous battle, defending the home he never left, it becomes too much. He tries to flee. It's too late. Teferi, the oldest man in the realm, is gone. And as the last man in Yeha falls, his village passes into another kingdom's hands, and then vanishes. The oldest kingdom, the oldest man, gone. Justinia was still further north, clearing the last of the zombies, but when word reached her about Teferi, she turned south to find the undead mountain. She had never known Teferi directly, only his legacy. She had watched him tend a farm he helped build 1,000 years ago. A quiet man doing a quiet thing in the middle of everything falling apart. She now understood what that meant. She had to put an end to this. Villagers joined the fight, lending whatever they had. One passerby even had time to pop out 2 children in the heat of battle. Wow, what a woman. Meanwhile, Port-au-Choix, zombies. Where did they all come from? This infection is so hard to follow. It doesn't look too bad though, I think they have it handled. The undead mountain was still going. Nails, absolute nails. Then, Meow Meow joined the fray. Turns out cats hate zombies too, and everybody else, probably. Wait, zombie Meow Meow. The last of the infection in the east cleared. It came down to Justinia. After a battle that lasted 3 years, the undead mountain was finally defeated. The strongest creature the world had ever produced, brought down by a woman who knew when to retreat and when to finish it. Justinia founded a new kingdom, Medina, built at the gates of her old home of Yeha. In memory of Tafari, she forged peace, a home worth protecting. To the south, King Batu, who finally found a kingdom of his own. He got what he wanted, eventually. The east was devastated, all the old villages gone, a post-apocalyptic wasteland, home of zombie Meow Meow. Even Port-au-Choix was wiped off the map, new lands for new villages, and so it all begins again, a chance for a new generation. In a few hundred years, most will have forgotten the sacrifices made this day. 614 survived the Great Apocalypse. And on that bombshell, I'd like to take a minute to thank all my fellow lab partners and channel members for supporting the channel. You guys help keep the lab light on when the algorithm fails to go our way. You guys are awesome. Goodbye.